Look at here. This is the thoracic skeleton, thoracic cage or the rib cage. This thoracic skeleton is made up of the sternum on the front. Then comes the costal cartilages. These are the costal cartilages. And then comes the ribs. These are the ribs or the sides. And over the back, this thoracic cage is completed by thoracic vertebra. So this is the thoracic skeleton. Inside this thoracic skeleton has got thoracic viscera, which include heart, two lungs, and other major vessels. All the thoracic viscera is present inside the thoracic skeleton. I will describe briefly about the bones that form this thoracic cage. First of all, this sternum bone, it is present on the front midline. It has got a manubrium over the top. This part of the sternum is known as the manubrium. Then this is the body of the sternum. This piece is the body of the sternum, and at the end, this tip is known as the xiphoid process. This is the xiphoid process of the sternum. Sternum provides attachment to the costal cartilages. You can note down, these are the costal cartilages. After the costal cartilages, we have got the ribs. These are the ribs. Ribs can be classified into various categories. The categories include true ribs and the false ribs, and the typical ribs and the atypical ribs. First, the true and the false ribs. A rib is true rib when it is coming from the vertebra, and then with the help of a single costal cartilage, it gets attachment with the sternum. Such rib will be labeled as the true rib. I'll repeat, a true rib is starting from the thoracic vertebra, and then with the help of a single costal cartilage, it gets attached to the sternum bone. This kind of a rib is known as the true rib. This true rib is also named as vertebrosternal rib, from vertebra till the sternum with the help of one costal cartilage. So rib number 1 is true rib. Rib number 2 you can see is a true rib. Rib number 3 is a true rib. Rib number 4, 5, 6 and 7. These first 7 ribs are the true ribs, are the vertebrosternal ribs, because they are connected with the sternum with the help of single piece of the costal cartilage. After these 7 ribs, we will have false ribs. So the remaining 5 out of 12, 5 are remaining. These are false ribs, because either they are not connected with the sternum. Last 2 ribs have got no connection with the sternum. They are floating ribs. They are free ribs. Rib number 11 and rib number 12. Starting from the thoracic vertebra 11 and 12, these ribs are free. These are false ribs. These 2 ribs are also known as vertebral ribs, because they have got attachment over one end, over the vertebral end. So these are labeled as named as the vertebral ribs. Now coming to the rib number 10, 9 and 8. These are also false ribs. Why? Because they get connected with the sternum, but their costal cartilage has got no direct connection with the sternum. Their costal cartilage get connect with each other, and then this costal cartilage get connect with the costal cartilage of the 7th rib. In this way, these 3 ribs get connected with this costal cartilage and then with the sternum. Therefore, we name these 3 ribs, rib number 8, rib number 9 and rib number 10 as false ribs. And they are also named as vertebrochondral ribs. Chondral mean cartilage. So the rib number 8, 9 and 10 starting from vertebra, they end at the cartilages. So they are labeled as the vertebrochondral rib. Rib number 8, 9 and 10. These are also the false ribs. Now coming to the second classification, that is typical rib and the atypical rib. If we label a rib, a typical rib, there are certain features, there are certain properties that a rib must have to be labeled as a typical rib. These are the conditions for being a typical rib. Look at here. This is a rib. This is a typical rib. It has got a vertebral end over the back, then it has got a body, and then it has got the sternal end over the front. This is a typical rib. It has got certain specific properties. I will explain shortly what are those specific properties for being a typical rib. If a rib doesn't have these typical properties, then that rib will be labeled as the atypical rib. Look at here. This rib is different from the typical rib. This rib is shorter and has got certain features that are not present in the typical rib. So a rib will be labeled as atypical rib if it doesn't match the typical rib. Even a single feature is missing or even a single feature is present extra, then that rib will be labeled as the atypical rib. So look at here. First two ribs are the atypical ribs. Then come rib number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 and 9. Rib number 3 till the rib number 9. These ribs are typical ribs, have got same anatomy, have got same features. In the end, the rib number 10, 11 and 12, they are atypical ribs. So the atypical ribs are rib number 1, 2 and then 10, 11 and 12. These are atypical ribs. I will explain shortly one by one what are the features of a typical rib and what are the features of the atypical ribs. How atypical ribs are different from the typical ribs. Now I'll talk about the intercostal spaces. Look at here. Between the 12 thoracic ribs, we have got 11 spaces. Note down. If we have got 12 ribs, we will have 11 spaces. These 11 spaces are known as intercostal spaces, and these intercostal spaces has got intercostal artery, has got intercostal vein and has got intercostal nerves. We name these arteries, vein and nerve according to the space. Between rib number 1 and 2, we have got first intercostal space. Between rib number 2 and 3, we have got second intercostal space, and so on. We have got 11 intercostal spaces, and 11 intercostal spaces will have intercostal arteries, intercostal veins and intercostal nerves. There are some special additional points for the intercostal spaces as well. I have already described you that rib number 11 and 12 are free ribs, are floating ribs. They are not continuous with the sternum. They are open. So when we count the spaces over the back, we will have 11 intercostal spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. So 11 intercostal spaces are only present when we count the intercostal spaces from the back. Therefore, posterior aspect has got 11 intercostal arteries. I'll repeat, posterior aspect, we have got 11 intercostal arteries, we have got 11 intercostal veins. But on the front, the last two intercostal spaces are missing. You can note down, you can count here, we have got 9 intercostal spaces. Intercostal space number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. On the front, we have got 9 intercostal spaces. So anterior intercostal arteries and anterior intercostal veins will be 9, and posterior intercostal artery and posterior intercostal vein will be 11. Over the front, we have got 9 intercostal spaces because rib number 11 and 12 are floating ribs, free ribs. Okay. One more important fact that I want to tell you here about the intercostal nerves, thoracic nerves. In the space 1, we have got first thoracic nerve. In the space 2, we have got second thoracic spinal nerve. In the space 3, we have got third thoracic spinal nerve. These spinal nerves, ventral rami, when it will reach the intercostal space, will be labeled as the intercostal nerve. So, first intercostal nerve is from first thoracic spinal nerve, second intercostal nerve is from second thoracic spinal nerve, and so on. What about 12th thoracic nerve? Is it intercostal? The answer is no. 12th intercostal nerve is beneath the 12th rib. This 12th intercostal nerve, ventral rami, will be labeled as subcostal nerve because 12th intercostal nerve cannot be there. We have got 11 intercostal spaces. 12th thoracic nerve, ventral rami, will be there, will be present beneath this 12th rib. So that nerve, ventral rami, will be labeled as the subcostal nerve, 12th thoracic nerve. The ventral rami of the spinal nerve, thoracic 1 and thoracic 2, run in the intercostal space as the first intercostal nerve and the second intercostal nerve. These two intercostal nerves also contribute to supply the
upper limb
innervation. So these two nerves are known as the intercostobrachial nerves. These two nerves are not the typical thoracic nerves. After this, third, fourth, fifth and sixth intercostal nerves are the nerves that are present in the intercostal space and purely supply the muscles of the thoracic wall. They don't contribute to any other region. These nerves, third, fourth, fifth and sixth intercostal nerve, are the typical thoracic nerves. After this, we have got the 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th and 11th intercostal nerve. So the 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11th intercostal nerve, these intercostal nerves supply the intercostal space. Yes, they supply the muscles in these intercostal spaces. And after supplying these intercostal spaces, these nerves move towards the abdominal wall, the interior abdominal wall. So the intercostal nerve number 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11, they move toward the abdominal wall. Here, the abdominal muscles will be supplied by the T7, T8, T9, T10 and T11. Therefore, these nerves are known as the thoraco-abdominal nerves. Okay, so this is about the introduction of the skeleton of the thoracic cage. Now I'll come to the individual bones, the sternum, the ribs and the thoracic vertebra. Now look at here. This is a typical rib. It is a curved flat bone with two ends and a shaft in between. Among two ends, the interior end. This is the interior end. You can see it is oval in shape. This is known as the sternal end. This is oval in shape and with the help of costal cartilage, this will get attached with the sternum. So this is the interior or the sternal end of the rib. Now coming to the posterior end, look at here. This is the posterior end of the rib. The posterior end of the rib has got connection with the vertebra, the thoracic vertebra. Therefore, this is known as the vertebral end. This vertebral end has got head. After the head, the constriction is known as the neck, and after neck, the shaft will start. So, first the head. Head has got two facets. You can note down these are two facets, and in between we have got a crest. These two facets will articulate with the two thoracic vertebra. I will explain shortly how this vertebral end of the rib will make joint with the thoracic vertebra, and that joint will be named as the costovertebral joint. One rib articulate with two thoracic vertebra. Rib head has got two facets and in between is the crest. After the head, the constriction is known as the neck. This one is the neck of the rib. You can note down the posterior end is wedge shape. At the junction of the neck and the shaft, we can locate a tubercle. This tubercle has got two parts. This is the costal tubercle, the rib tubercle. The rib tubercle has got two parts, a smooth part and a rough part. Smooth part for the synovial joint, for articulation with transverse process of the thoracic vertebra. Here we will have costotransverse joint, a synovial joint. The smooth part of the tubercle of the rib will make synovial joint with the transverse process of one single vertebra. The head will articulate with two consecutive vertebra, thoracic vertebra. But this smooth part of the costal tubercle will articulate with single transverse process of the thoracic vertebra. I'll show you shortly. So the tubercle has got two parts, a smooth part and a rough part. Rough part is for the attachment of the ligaments that support the costotransverse joint. Now I'll describe the angle of the rib shaft. This is the shaft of the rib and here it has got maximum convexity. This point is the angle of the rib. This angle is almost 5 cm away from the tubercle of the rib. If there is pressure from any side over the rib, this is the weakest point. Look at here, like a stick. If we apply pressure over the rib from any side, this is the point where the rib will break. This is the most frequent site of the fracture of the rib shaft. This is the angle of the rib. Now coming to the shaft of the rib, that is curved. This curved shaft has got two borders and two surfaces. In anatomical position, we can see that we have got two borders, an upper border and a lower border. The upper border is smooth and rounded, but the lower border is sharp. This is sharp, lower border of the rib. Upper border is rounded and smooth and the lower border is sharp. This is sharp lower border of the rib and this is the rounded smooth upper border of the rib. Then rib has got two surfaces, an outer surface towards the body wall and an inner surface towards the thoracic viscera. The outer surface, you can note down, is smooth. We have got smooth outer surface and over the inner surface we have got another crest. Between this crest and the sharp inferior border we have got a groove. I repeat, over a typical thoracic rib, internal aspect, inner surface, we have got a ridge, an oblique ridge, and between this oblique ridge and the inferior border we have got a groove. This is the costal groove or the subcostal groove. This is the subcostal groove of the rib. In this subcostal groove, we have got artery, vein and nerve. We have got intercostal artery, we have got intercostal vein and we have got intercostal nerve. And the relation is VAN, V-A-N. Uppermost is the vein, then is the artery and lowermost is the nerve. So we can say that VAN runs in the subcostal groove. I'll repeat, VAN, vein, artery and nerve runs in the subcostal groove that is present between the ridge over the internal surface and the sharp inner border. This is the subcostal groove where we have got the VAN. So this is about the anatomy of a typical rib. For the side determination, this rib belongs to right side or left side, there are simple principles. We have to point out the three landmarks. One for anterior posterior, one for medial lateral and one for superior inferior. So for anterior and posterior, we have anterior end that is oval in shape, that is the sternal end. So this will be present on the front. For superior and inferior, we can locate the potters. The upper border is rounded in shape, is rounded contour. This is rounded. So this is the superior aspect of the rib. Now coming to the medial and lateral aspect, for determining medial and lateral aspect, we have subcostal groove. This subcostal groove is present over the medial aspect. Hence, this rib belongs to the left side. In this way, we can determine the side of the rib. All these features that I have described, that this rib has got an anterior end oval in shape, the posterior end wedge shape with a head with two facets in between the crest, and then it has got tubercle with two impressions, a smooth impression and a rough impression, and then it has got a shaft with a superior round border, inferior sharp border. It has got two surfaces, an outer surface and an inner surface. Note down, all these are the features of a typical rib. If we have even a single extra feature or even a single feature from these is missing, then that rib will be labeled as the atypical rib. I'll show you shortly what are the atypical ribs. Now I'll provide you simple description of the anatomy of the vertebra that will help you in easy description of vertebral anatomy whenever you are asked about it. So, vertebra has got two parts. It has got a body and it has got an arch. The arch has got lamina. It has got two lamina. And the two lamina are connected in back midline, the posterior midline. The two lamina get connected, and from here we'll get a projection that is known as the spine of the vertebra. So these are the two parts of a vertebra. It has got body on the front and it has got arch over the back. The arch and the body are connected to each other with the help of the pedicle. So here we have got the pedicle. These are the pedicles of the vertebra. At the junction of the pedicle and the lamina, there is a lateral projection of the bone known as the transverse process. I repeat, on both sides, at the junction of the pedicle and the transverse process, there is a lateral projection of a bony part known as the transverse process. So this is a simple anatomy of a vertebra. We'll say that it has got two parts. Over the front it has got body, and over the back it has got arch. Arch has got two laminas. These are the two laminas. In the posterior midline, these two laminas join to form the spine of the vertebra. The arch and the body are connected to each other with the help of the pedicle. These are the pedicles. At the junction of the pedicle and the lamina, there is an outward projection known as the transverse process. So this is the transverse process at the junction of the pedicle and the lamina. In the center, between the body and the lamina, we have got this vertebral foramen. This vertebral foramen houses the spinal cord. Here we have got the spinal cord. This vertebral foramina of 31 vertebrae join to form one vertebral canal. So here we have got the spinal cord. Between the body and the arch, we have got the spinal cord. Now I'll describe the anatomy of a thoracic vertebra. In fact, a typical thoracic vertebra. This is a typical thoracic vertebra because it has got all the features that are present in the typical thoracic vertebra. If any of the features of a typical thoracic vertebra are missing, or if there is an extra feature present, then that vertebra will be labeled as the atypical thoracic vertebra. Get here with an external shape, you can easily recognize this is the shape of the typical thoracic vertebra and this is the shape of the atypical thoracic vertebra. I will provide you detail shortly. First, let me complete the description of anatomy of a typical thoracic vertebra. Thoracic vertebra or any vertebra is described like this. It has got a body and has got a arch. The body and arch are connected at the level of the pedicle. This is the pedicle. So the body of the vertebra has got four aspects. It has got a superior aspect. It has got an inferior aspect. At the superior and the inferior aspect, this vertebral body will get connected with the vertebral body of the adjacent vertebra. But in between these two bodies, we have got the intervertebral disc. The intervertebral disc will connect two bodies of the vertebra. So this is the body of the thoracic vertebra, which is heart shaped. Other than superior and inferior aspect, it has got an anterior aspect and a posterior aspect. I'll repeat, the body margins has got an interior aspect and a posterior aspect. The anterior aspect of the thoracic vertebra is towards the thoracic cavity. This is towards the thoracic cavity, and the posterior aspect of the body contribute in the formation of the vertebral foramina. Now coming to the arch of the vertebra. The arch of the vertebra has got two lamina. These are the two laminas of the vertebral arch that get connected in the midline, and this connection projects outward, has got posterior projection. The two laminas get joined in the midline and has got projection outward, projection posteriorly. This outward projection is known as the spine of the vertebra. Now look at here. This is the pedicle of the vertebra that joins the vertebral body and the vertebral arch. This is the lamina of the vertebra. At the junction of the lamina and the pedicle, we have got another projection, that is lateral projection on both sides. This lateral projection on both sides at the junction of the pedicle and the lamina, this is known as the transverse process of the vertebra. So this is the transverse process of this vertebra. At the junction of the pedicle and the lamina, we have got articular facets. Look at here, these are the articular facets. These are the articular facet that will articulate with the articular facet of the vertebra upward. So at the junction of the pedicle and the lamina, we have got articular facet, both superiorly as well as inferiorly. Look at here, this is also the articular facet, the inferior articular facet that is present at the junction of the pedicle and the lamina. So at the junction of the pedicle and the lamina, inferiorly as well as superiorly, we have got the articular facets. This is the superior articular facet and this is the inferior articular facet. Inferior articular facet will articulate, will make a synovial joint with the superior articular facet of the vertebra below. Suppose this is the vertebra present below this vertebra. This vertebra has got a superior articular facet. This is the superior articular facet. This superior articular facet will articulate with the inferior articular facet of the vertebra above. So we will have a synovial joint here. Look at here. This is the joint between the inferior articular facet of the vertebra above and the superior articular facet of the vertebra below. Note down, this joint is a cavitated synovial joint, a sliding joint. A minimal movement will happen here. This joint is known as zygapophyseal joint or simply a facet joint. I repeat, the joint between the inferior articular facet of a superior vertebra and superior articular facet of a inferior vertebra. This is known as the facet joint or zygapophyseal joint. Now I will demonstrate some important ligaments that are present between the two adjacent vertebra. This is spine of vertebra. This is the spine of vertebra. Between the two spines, we have got a ligament known as the interspinous ligament. Here we will have a ligament that connects two spinous processes. And between the spinous processes, we have got the interspinous ligament. But over the tips of all spinous processes, we have got a one conjunctive ligament, and then one conjunctive ligament is known as the supraspinous ligament. The supraspinous ligament is not present over the spical spines because there we have got the ligamentum nuchae. Okay, this is the lamina of a vertebra. This is also the lamina of the vertebra. Between the two laminas of a vertebra, we have got a ligament. This ligament is known as the ligamentum flavum. I repeat, between the two laminas of the vertebra, we have got a ligament. That ligament is known as the ligamentum flavum. This is the transverse process of a vertebra. This is also the transverse process of the vertebra. Between two transverse processes, again we have got a ligament. This ligament is known as the intertransverse ligament. Here we will have a ligament. between the two transverse processes. This ligament is known as the intertransverse ligament. Look at here. This is the anterior end of the vertebra. The anterior end of the vertebra, in fact, all vertebra, when make a vertebral column, over the anterior end, there runs one ligament, one single ligament. That's why we'll name that ligament as anterior longitudinal ligament. This is the anterior longitudinal ligament, that is one single ligament connecting the vertebral bodies over the front. Like this anterior longitudinal ligament that is present over the front of the body of all vertebra, we have got a ligament that is present over the back. This is the posterior margin of the vertebral bodies. Note down, this is the posterior margin of the vertebral bodies. All the posterior margins of the vertebral bodies will get connected with one single ligament, and that ligament is known as the posterior longitudinal ligament. We can say that posterior longitudinal ligament is present inside the vertebral canal. So these are the important ligaments that you should remember while describing the anatomy of the vertebra. Now I'll describe the special features of the thoracic vertebra. Look at here. This is the body of the vertebra, and over the superolateral margin as well as the infralateral margin, we have got facets. These facets are for articulation with the ribs. This facet is not complete, cannot articulate with single rib. It will join with the facet of the vertebra above. So this facet is known as demifacet, half facet. So we have got demifacet over the superolateral margin on both sides of the vertebra. Superolateral margin, infralateral margin of one side, and then the superolateral margin and the infralateral margin of the other side has got demifacets for articulation with the ribs. Over these demifacets, head of the rib will form a joint. This joint between the head of the rib and the demifacets is known as the costovertebral joint. Costo for rib. So the joint between the rib and the vertebral body is known as the costovertebral joint. Look at here. At the tip of the transverse process, again we have got an articular facet. Over the both sides, over the tip of the transverse process, we have got a articular facet. This articular facet is going to articulate with the costal tubercle articular surface, or the costal tubercle, rib tubercle. We have got an articular facet. This articular facet will articulate with the transverse process articular facet. This joint is known as the costotransverse joint. Costo for the rib. This joint is the costotransverse joint. Let me demonstrate you further. Look at here. This is the consecutive set of 3 thoracic vertebra. This is the vertebral body lateral side, and these are the transverse process. So transverse process has got costal facets. You can note down easily. We have got articular facets over the transverse process. Also note down here, over the vertebral bodies, we have got demifacets. The 2 demifacets connect to form one articular surface. This demifacet is half articular surface. This demifacet will combine with the demifacet of the superior vertebra. So we will get one articular surface where the rib will articulate. Look at here. Let me show you how we'll have joint at this level. Look at here. This is the costovertebral joint. The head of the rib, which has got 2 facets in between crest. These 2 facets are for articulation with the 2 demifacets. In this way, one rib will articulate the demifacets of 2 thoracic vertebra. I will repeat, I am showing you that we have got this costovertebral joint. On one side, we have got the head of the rib with 2 facets in between crest. On other sides, we have got 2 demifacets from 2 thoracic vertebra. So this is the costovertebral joint. But how we'll count? Among the 2 consecutive vertebra, lower vertebra is the vertebra that matches the sequence of the rib. I'll repeat, among the two thoracic vertebra, lower vertebra is the vertebra that will match the sequence of the rib number. What this means is that if this is rib number 5, this will articulate with thoracic vertebra 4 and 5. Lower one belongs to the rib number, not the upper one. If this is rib number 6, this is going to articulate with vertebra number 5 and 6. So you will say like this: 7th rib, vertebra number 6, 7. 8th rib, vertebra number 7, 8. 5th rib, vertebra number 4, 5. Now coming to the costotransverse joint. Look at here. This is the articular facet over the transverse process of the vertebra, and this will articulate with the articular facet present over the costal tubercle. This joint is the costotransverse joint. Here there is no issue of numbering. If this is rib number 5, this is vertebra number 5. Rib number 5 will make costotransverse joint with the transverse process of the 5th thoracic vertebra. There is no confusion in the costotransverse joint. This is very simple. Between the articular facet of the rib tubercle and the articular facet of the transverse process, we have got a joint, a synovial plane joint, that is the costotransverse joint. Like this, we will have a joint here between the transverse process, articular facet, and the articular facet present over the rib tubercle. Now I'll provide you a simple understanding about two concepts. Number one, the vertebral notch transforms into intervertebral foramina, and intervertebral foramina provides exit to the spinal nerve, ventral and dorsal rami. Concept number two is how the vertebral foramen transforms into the vertebral canal that has got the spinal cord inside it. First, the vertebral notches and the intervertebral foramina. When we look at the vertebra inside view like this, vertebra has got two parts. It has got a body and it has got a arch, and in between is the pedicle. Let me draw these bones here for you. We have got the body of the vertebra and over the front. This is the body, and over the back side we have got the arch that end at the spine. These two parts are joined together with the help of a pedicle in a way that it leaves a deeper gap below and a shallower gap above. We have got a deeper gap below. This is known as the inferior vertebral notch. And above, the shallower gap is known as the superior vertebral notch. Like this vertebra, we will have another vertebra that has got a body and has got a arch. Look at here. Again, we will draw a body over the front and an arch over the back that will end over the spine. In between these two parts, the joining bone is known as the pedicle. This is the pedicle, which is attached in a way that it leaves a deeper gap below, that is the inferior vertebral notch, and a shallower gap above, that is the superior vertebral notch. But these two vertebrae, when come together, align together, the inferior vertebral notch of a superior vertebra and superior vertebral notch of inferior vertebra join together to form a foramen. This foramen is known as the intervertebral foramen because it is completed by two vertebra. Superior vertebral notch of an inferior vertebra and inferior vertebral notch of a superior vertebra. This is the intervertebral foramina present over both sides. Look at here, over these original vertebra. I will explain this quickly. We have got a body and we have got a arch. In between is the pedicle. Beneath pedicle, we have got a deeper notch known as the inferior vertebral notch. Above, there is a shallower gap, shallower groove known as the superior vertebral notch. When the conjunctive vertebra align together, you can now understand very easily that the superior vertebral notch along with the inferior vertebral notch of the conjunctive vertebra join together to form the intervertebral foramina. This is the intervertebral foramina, which will provide exit to the spinal nerves. We can note down this over the both sides of the vertebra, or the right side as well as over the left side, or both sides we will have the intervertebral foramina. This is the intervertebral foramina. Look at here, we've got a set of the conjunctive vertebra. In this set of a conjunctive vertebra, you can repeat this fact. We've got a body of the thoracic vertebra and we have got an arch over the back side. This is the pedicle. Beneath the pedicle, we have got a deeper notch. This is the inferior vertebral notch. This is also a vertebra with a pedicle. Above it gives a shallow notch, that is the superior vertebral notch. These two notches, inferior vertebral notch and the superior vertebral notch, join to form the intervertebral foramina. This intervertebral foramina is the site for the exit of the spinal nerves. In the center, we have got the spinal cord. In the center, we have got the spinal cord. From the spinal cord, we get the spinal nerves. And from here, from the intervertebral foramina, we have got the emergence of the spinal nerve, ventral and dorsal ramus. Okay, so this is very simple now for you to make a concept of the vertebral notches and the intervertebral foramina. Now let me demonstrate the vertebral foramina and the vertebral canal, concept of the vertebral foramina and the vertebral canal. Look at here, this is one single vertebra. This one single vertebra has got two parts, you already know. It has got a arch over the back and body over the front. In the center, there is a gap. This rounded gap is known as the vertebral foramina. When we are talking about a single vertebra, then this gap is the vertebral foramina. If you are asked about the boundaries of the vertebral foramina, you can say that over the posterior aspect, it is formed by the laminas, and over the anterior aspect, it is formed by the vertebral body. This intervertebral foramina has got the spinal cord. The content of the intervertebral foramina is the spinal cord along with the arteries of the spinal cord, the veins of the spinal cord, and the meningeal coverings of the spinal cord. All these are the contents of the vertebral foramina. When the vertebra arrange in a sequence above each other, then this foramina leads to a conjunctive canal. This conjunctive canal is known as the vertebral canal. When we are talking about a single vertebra, then it's vertebral foramina. When we are talking about vertebral column, a long length of the vertebral column, then this foramina is converted into a vertebral canal in which we have got the spinal cord. Look at here, in this way, through the vertebral foraminas, spinal cord will pass, and through the intervertebral foraminas, from here we'll get the spinal nerves. So now things should be very simple and easy for you. Let me demonstrate you the further aspects of the bones of the thoracic cage. So now you know that this is the thoracic skeleton, which is made up of the sternum, then the costal cartilages. These are the costal cartilages. Then we have got the ribs, 12 thoracic ribs, and over the back we have the 12 thoracic vertebra. Between these parts of the thoracic skeleton bones, we have got many joints. Now I am going to show you these joints and the category they belong to. Okay, here, this is the sternum, which has got manubrium, body, and the Z5. Between manubrium and the body, we have got a joint. This joint is known as the manubrosternal joint, and manubrosternal joint belongs to the Scandi cartilaginous joint variety. This is the body of the sternum, and this is the Z5 process. Between these two parts, we have got a joint here. This joint is known as the Ziphi sternal joint, and Ziphi sternal joint belongs to primary cartilaginous variety. Look at here, these are the cartilages. These cartilages have got two ends, has got a medial end and has got a lateral end. Over the medial end, these cartilages make joint with the sternum, and this joint is known as the sternochondral joint. Between sternum and the chondrum, between sternum and the cartilage, we have got a joint, that is the sternochondral joint. This is the first sternochondral joint between first cartilage and the manubrium. This is the first sternochondral joint. This belongs to the primary cartilaginous joint, righty. After this, second, third, fourth, and all these sternochondral joints belongs to the synovial joint variety. Plain synovial joints are present here. Okay. Over the lateral end, the cartilage is going to make joint with the bone, with the rib. This joint is known as the costochondral joint. This joint is known as the costochondral joint. And costochondral joint belongs to the righty, that is primary cartilaginous joint. This is primary cartilaginous joint. Look at here. Cartilages make joint with each other. Over here, over here, over here. These cartilages make joint with each other. These joints are known as the interchondral joints. Interchondral joints belong to the synovial plane variety. These are synovial joint of plane variety. Now look at here. This rib is going to make joint with the vertebra, with the vertebral body and with the transverse process of the vertebra. One is costovertebral joint and one is costotransverse joint. The rib head is going to make joint with the body of the vertebra. This is costovertebral joint. This is synovial double plane joint. The tubercle of the rib is going to make joint with the transverse process of the vertebra. This is costotransverse joint, a plane gliding joint, a synovial joint. Now look at here, the joint between the vertebra. This is the body of the vertebra. In between we have got the intervertebral disc that is made up of the fibrous cartilage. So this is a secondary cartilaginous joint, intervertebral joint. Look at here, between the two facets, superior articular facet and inferior articular facet, we have got facet joint. This joint is also known as zygapophyseal joint. This is a synovial plane joint between the superior articular facet and the inferior articular facet. So that's all about the bones and the joints of the thoracic skeleton. You should also follow the data provided in the pictures and the tables in this presentation, and the things will be very simple for you, inshallah. Best of luck for your thoracic skeleton anatomy.